Hey y'all! Welcome. It is Wednesday at 8 o'clock, which means it is time for Get Your Life. Every week I am here checking in with you all, tackling these hard topics, talking about those things that are getting in your way of living free. Okay, and I'm bringing my own experience today. In particular, I'm really going to be talking about my personal experiences and my journey to this space. So I'm so excited for you all to be here with me. My name is Dr. Parsons, for those of you who don't know me, and this is Authentically Me, a space where we all have the freedom, the tools, and the resources to live as our genuine and authentic selves. And I'm so glad that you are joining me here today. I just feel like authenticity is the space with which we can live our best life. And we all deserve that, right? And there's so many things, whether it's internal, our own kind of like mental or emotional blocks, or externally, those things that we don't have the tools, we don't know the skills to really enact, who we are inside or bring that into reality. And so that's what I'm all about. I'm about bridging that gap, right? So we can all stand firmly in our truth and have the confidence to do that. So that's what I'm all about. And I'm so glad. If you aren't already, please be sure to follow me, Authentically Me _ Live Free on Instagram and Facebook. Make sure you share it with your friends. If you find this has been helpful, tag somebody who you feel like could, who needs this message. This is about building community, right? Because if I can live in my truth and that can inspire you to live in yours, then we can all be free. And that's what we're here. That's what we're about. I like to share a little bit about my backstory, a little bit about what brought me here, a little bit about what birthed Authentically Me. So I have for a long time, really my whole life, been a high achiever. So from the outside, I was doing everything that you're supposed to be doing. I was, getting the degrees, in the relationship, building a family, just succeeding, right? But inside, there was all of this kind of internal turmoil, right? There was this ongoing battle I was having with myself. And a big part of that was me knowing that I was not living up to my full potential, that there was more for me to be doing in this world, more for me to be contributing, and more impact for me to be having. I wasn't doing what I was built to do, and I knew that internally, right? And that was causing me a lot of pain and anguish and heartache and sadness, and I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know how to resolve that. And then, I lived through tragedy. Then my partner was killed in a car accident. And when your whole life is just ripped away from you like that, with no warning, you then have no choice but to fall into healing, right? It's I felt like, okay, I'm either going to literally die myself, or I'm going to figure something else out. There has to be some other way. And so in my healing, right, in my journey through healing, I was thrown into that through grief, I also learned how to heal and experience. I didn't even know that I was learning it, but experience healing from all those other layers too. All those other pains and markers of anguish that I had been holding on to. And it brought me just to this freedom. It brought me to this peace. This place that I didn't even know existed. I didn't know that I could be without feeling that heaviness of I'm not all that I should be. So really it was a place of accepting all of who I am that brought that peace, right? And that healing journey is something that it's just it's incomparable to anything that I've ever been through. And the peace that I feel now is something that just is too good to keep for myself. That's what birthed Authentically Me, because I want everybody to have that space of acceptance of who you are fully. Freedom to be however you show up in this world, right? And to express that openly. And to live in alignment so that your actions are in alignment with that. All right? So, that's what brought me here. And I am really just teaching you all the things that I did on my journey, as well as, many of y'all know I'm a psychologist too, so I'm bringing in that training too. We're bringing it all together, right? Those things that work, right? Those things that have research behind them. So that this is something that you can take and you can use to change your life too. And so this episode, actually, I'm very excited. This came in as a topic request from you all. So please follow up with this. If there are things that you want me to talk about, make sure you hit me up, leave a comment, DM me. I'm very responsive. I really want this to be something that's useful to you all. So I'm so grateful that you all gave this or sent this request in. This idea of how do I practice self-love while I'm single? How can I cultivate a space of loving myself, of like being filled with love while, I feel like I'm not in a relationship where I can share that, right? Or I don't have, quote unquote, the title or the status that our world has taught us you need to have love in your life. Okay, so that's what we're talking about today. And today's blog post was like a little bit of a primer for that. So if you haven't already, make sure you check the link in my bio for today's post, where I talked about my year of being single by choice and what I have learned thus far in this process. Okay, so make sure you read that. But I'm going to give you a little bit like of a backstory too. If you haven't read it yet, or you haven't caught up or don't know where I am in this process, I want to tell you a little bit about like how I got here, right? So after my partner passed and I went through my healing journey, and then I felt like I was in a space to be ready to date again, I went through a series of failed relationships. A series of relationships that didn't work out. And they weren't bad men. I'm not in any way knocking the people who I was partnered with. And even the relationships, there were a few in the beginning, just based on my space and my healing, that weren't healthy relationships. But I also had very healthy relationships, and they still didn't work out. And so whenever I notice a pattern in my life, whenever I'm like, oh, you done been here before. this the same cycle you went through. That to me is a sign that it's time for me to take a step back and evaluate what's going on. To figure out, okay, I'm not going to just keep doing the same thing over and over to get to, the result that I don't want, right? If I'm ending up someplace I don't want to be, that means I have to change what I'm doing. And to change, it means I need to take a step back and evaluate, what am I doing that's not working? Okay? So in that process of me being honest with myself, right? Figuring out what is going wrong, I had to admit, and there's a level of brutal honesty that this requires, I had to admit to myself that the reason I was going into these relationships, a big reason that I wanted a relationship so badly, was to feel secure, to feel comfortable, especially after having a plan for a lifelong partnership that was taken from me. That was my comfort zone, being bonded with somebody else, right? In that intimate way. And so I was kind of desperate to get back to that feeling of security. And I associated that with the relationship. I was like, okay, if I want to feel secure, then I need to be in a relationship. The other thing that I realized, okay, is that I was using a relationship to validate my worth. And these messages, they come from all different places, right? All from society, from parents, from family, from friends, and then internally, like we internalize those messages too, that like, to know that I am worthy of love, I have to be partnered. Like that to me is my proof that I'm lovable, right? And that I'm worthy. So I recognize that, like, part of what I'm doing is trying to find a relationship so that I can feel whole, so that I can feel complete, right? This place of almost like a little bit of, part of how I recognize it is that there's like a little bit of like shame in claiming being single, right? Especially at my stage in life where people kind of look at you like, well, why are you single, right? Or at least that's how I experienced it. And so for me, I'm like, okay, well, why is that something to be ashamed of? Like, why is that something that I feel like I have to explain? Or why is that something I don't want people to know, right? And why on the other side am I like, so proud to be in a relationship, right? That's when I'm like, okay, I'm using that relationship to validate me, right? Okay? And all of those reasons. Oh, and there's a third one. This one's really important too, right? I also was searching for, and not just a relationship, but like my partner. I was searching for, okay, I have to find the one, because I was telling myself that I could not plan and take steps towards building my future if I didn't know who was going to be in my future. If I didn't know who I was going to build my family with. I was telling myself like that this was like a serial thing. Like I have to have a partner first, and then we can create our life plan. And if I don't have that partner, then I'm stalled. That I don't know, directionless. Or at the very least, like unable to commit to a direction. So I felt this like building anxiety of like, okay, I have to figure this part out first so that I can start life. And that was another layer of the pressure. So when I realized all these reasons, I was like, okay, so none of these are good reasons to be in a relationship. You should want to be in a relationship to like share your love with somebody. To share the things that you enjoy about your life with somebody else, right? To have times of connection and intimacy with somebody that you value. Like those are positive reasons to be in a relationship. But I'm over here like, oh, I want this to feel whole and to validate who I am and to make it okay to go after the things that I want. So y'all know I had to call myself out. Part of being authentic is being honest with yourself. Holding yourself accountable. And I'm so grateful I have, a group of girlfriends who will do that for me too. So I called my best friend, was like, okay, so this is what's going on. I think I need to be single. And she was like, yeah, you right. You right. You do. You need them people in your life. Those people who won't sugarcoat it. Those people who won't coddle you. Those people who will tell you the truth. That if those are the reasons, the things that you are going after, the things that are motivating you to be in a relationship, you need to scale back and heal. You need to take a step back and be willing to heal. To take the time to heal. So that you can come to the relationship whole. Right? So I pledged a year. I promised myself I'm going to be single for a year. And I'm going to take the time to figure this out. Right? And I'm going to learn about myself. right? What I like and what I don't like. And I'm going to find peace in being single. Remember how I talked about, like, I in that healing journey, I found peace with being me. So now this is another layer of that. Like, okay, now I'm finding peace with being single. And yeah, like, I'm not going to lie, I definitely still want partnership, right? And long term, that's something I absolutely see in my life. And I recognize that there are huge parts of that are outside of my control. I intimately recognize that, right? In my experience, in my background, and knowing that even when I had my person, life happened, right? And he was taken from us. That was outside of both of our control. So things don't always go the way you think they will. And if I am so attached to one outcome of my life looking one specific way, and not being willing to be open to, or at least find peace in my life looking something different from that, then what I'm doing is like really hedging a ridiculous bet, like a win the lottery style bet of like, this is the only way that I'm going to enjoy my life. And I refuse that. Absolutely not. Any life that I have is a blessing. Any moment that I have to live is a blessing. And I will cherish it, even if it doesn't look the way that I thought it would. Even if it doesn't map on to my expectations, it is still here. I am still breathing. And there are people who aren't. All right? So that means that I have to find peace in being single. So that if that is the case, for longer than I want it to be, for the rest of my life, I know that I will still enjoy and be peaceful in my life. All right? So that's part of this. That's part of why that's so important. If there is something that you have to be whole, you need to do healing so that you can live with or without it. It's still okay to want it. It's still okay to pursue it. It's still okay to go after it. But if you aren't whole first, you are sacrificing the life that you do have. You're saying, okay, if it's not that, I'm going to waste the life that I have. And that's a shame. That's a shame. All right, so in my commitment, like I said, I made this commitment. Okay, so I'm going to be single. And I'm going to find my peace. I'm going to find my healing, right? And there's a question then, okay, so like, how do you love on yourself? What do you, because I don't want to just be single and just biding my time, right? What are you supposed to be doing, right? If you need this time of singledom, or if you are in it, maybe not by choice, maybe it's not what you want, maybe you're not committed to this pledge like I am, but if you just are single, you're like trying to figure out, trying to understand, how do I, practice self-love? Regardless of my relationship status. Because honestly, even if you're in a relationship, you need to know how to love yourself. All right, so these tips are like for everybody. This is something we can all use at all stages, right? And honestly, that really is a big part of it. I'm like recognizing as I'm doing these things, I'm like, oh, once I go back to being in a relationship, I'm going to be doing these same things. Hey, y'all, I see your hellos. I appreciate you being here. I'm so glad to see your faces. I know some of y'all I see on my page quite often, so I'm glad you are checking me out. And we're about to go down. We're about to jump into the tips, y'all, talking about how do you practice self-love? How do you do it? Well, tell me, y'all, because y'all see y'all here with me today. What do you do to practice self-love? What do you do now? What works for you? What do you like? Okay, this is something that is important. This is something that helps. This is something that makes me feel, loved. And again, regardless of your relationship status, right? Because when we look to other people to be that, it's a heavy burden. And I say that a lot because, I'm a parenting expert too. And I say that a lot because so often we talk about our whys are our children. And I know it's a little bit of a tangent, but I'm going to come back. And it is important to, and for your children for you to be driven to give your children, whatever world you want to give them. Absolutely. Like, I don't know many parents who don't have that as part of their drive. But for your child to be responsible for your whole purpose of living is a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure on this person who ultimately is going to grow into a being of themselves. And we lose ourselves in that. We lose ourselves in existing for our children. In the same ways that if you are existing for a relationship, right? Like, you are losing yourself in that. So you have to find a space to love who you are, to cultivate and to nourish yourself, and then share that love and allow like the synergy of both of your whole selves coming together to create something more powerful, right? That these two wholes are, amplified when they come together, and they exist as two distinct entities as on one and of themselves, right? So this practice of self-love is something that you can take with you across all the relationships in your life. So I'm gonna start. I'm gonna tell y'all my keys, the things that I use right now. I got three for you. The first one, and this might be my favorite. The first thing, the first tip I have for how to practice self-love when you are single is to center your pleasure. And sometimes we've got this idea that like pleasure has this connotation of being just about sex, right? And pleasure is just enjoyment, right? It's your space of, I desire and like this sensation or this smell, this moment, this energy, this person, right? And so you can find pleasure in anything. You can find pleasure in what you're eating. You can find pleasure in textures. You can find pleasure visually in the things that you see around you. Okay? And so allowing yourself to move through the world guided by your pleasures, ooh, child. When I tell you, I don't know if there's a better way to love yourself. What it's doing is bringing love, as your core, right? It's saying in every moment I'm giving myself the gift of enjoying this moment. And for some part of why I talk about why this is so important, especially when you're single, is, at least for me, part of my experience was when I was so attached to the outcome of being in a relationship, I was disconnected from whether or not I was actually enjoying each moment, whether or not the things that I was doing were actually pleasurable, because it was like a means to an end. Like, I'm doing these things to be bonded in a relationship, and that's what I want, right? So you become like almost like a shapeshifter. Like, I can contort and like make myself be it or do what I needed to do to like be in the relationship, right? And it's almost like that old Julia Roberts movie Runaway Bride, where, I don't know if y'all seen this, but I remember, and I don't know why this stuck with me, because I really don't have a good memory, but this scene in particular, I remember watching this as a kid and being so interested by this. She like had all these relationships that she would, ultimately be a runaway bride from. And one of the things that she did in all of these like committed, I'm in love relationships, is her favorite way to eat eggs was whatever the man's favorite way was to eat eggs. So much so that like she didn't actually know what she liked. She didn't actually know, the style of eggs she liked. So when she finally was like, I'm done with this, I'm actually going to like figure myself out and heal and figure out what's going on, she had like this whole plate of like eggs cooked 10 different ways so she could stop taste them and like sit and be honest with herself about which one of these do I like the best. And that is like, it just is such a reflection of my story of like, you know, I can make whatever work, you know, to be in the relationship, and I can, you know, bend and mold, and like I don't even really know whether or not I like it or not. Right? Like I'm so disconnected from my body, from myself, that I'm just rocking with what I need to do to be in a relationship. Rather than like I'm moving based on what I enjoy. I'm moving based on what feels good to me. You know, and I got to shout out Evian Whitney. If y'all don't know Evian Whitney's work, please follow her and get up on. She is a sexual liberation doula. I think that's the title that she uses. And when I tell you, every time I listen to her or read something she's written, I'm like, bombs dropped. Like, it's just extraordinary work. And people aren't doing what she's doing. So make sure you follow her. She just released this challenge of like I don't know the title of it, but it was basically like find pleasure in everything you're doing. Be driven by what feels good to you. In each moment, try to figure out like what can I do to, I think she says like infuse pleasure into this moment. And what's so beautiful about it is that it brings you into the present. Like I've been trying this over the past couple of days, and I noticed things like, I like the way that my makeup brush feels on my face, like the softness and the fullness of the bristles feels good, or like the smoothness of my hardwood floors I enjoy as I'm walking through my apartment, right? And it just makes every moment. It can be mundane things that you're doing where you're like, oh, like, you know, I'm enjoying this. And when you're able to be honest with yourself, you can stop doing things that you don't like. Stop doing things that don't feel good to you. Right? That is a practice of self-love. And one that you have the freedom to do when you're single. You can do this in your relationship too. And I will be doing this as I move through my relationship. But I'm saying, especially when you're single. Right? Like, I do those things that I enjoy. If I'm spending time with you, it's because I like this moment with you. If I'm no longer enjoying it, I'm not doing it anymore. Okay? And that's beautiful, right? That's freedom, right? That's the space of love. All right? And this one, okay, number 2, y'all. I said number 1 was my favorite, but I don't know. Number 2 might be. Number 2 is like this space of, this is something that I think just goes against people's idea of what it means to be single, right? So that's why I think this one's so important, right? Because it can be like eye-opening. So number 2 is to remind yourself that being single does not mean you have to be alone. All right, I'm going to say this again. Being single does not mean you have to be alone. All right? Because so often people like conflate the two. Like, if I'm single, I'm lonely, and like I'm by myself over here in the corner until I find somebody to be in a relationship with again, and like then I can connect with other people, right? Or and until then I'm just have to be by myself. So much so that like sometimes, if you're honest with yourself, people get into relationships just because they're lonely. They're like, I'm tired of being by myself, so sure, let's be together, okay? Like, let me tell y'all something. You don't have to, just because you're single doesn't mean you have to be by yourself. Not socially, not romantically, not sexually. Go out, enjoy other people, date, okay? Have connections with people, and it doesn't always have to be romantic, but just make sure that you are being intentional about cultivating bonds and relationships, okay? And this is so important because we are social creatures. We are social beings. All right? Time and time again, research has shown us that we need to be socially connected. That social bond is like just as much of a need as food and water. right? Like if you think about torture, there are isolation chambers because that is torturous to human beings. Okay? We need to be connected. And so when you say that okay, to be single means I have to deprive myself, you're starving yourself, right? Of course that's not maintainable. The same way that you're not going to be able to just stop eating or drinking and survive. You're not going to be able to. So it's a practice of, self-love to give yourself the opportunity to have those connections. So I go out, okay? I enjoy myself. I build friendships. I date, I have sex with people. I enjoy this time. And I don't deprive myself of intimacy because I'm single. Right? So it requires you to leave your house, yes. But it doesn't require you to do much more than that, especially when, again, you're driven by your pleasure. You're centering that. You're like, okay, well, if this is somebody who I'm enjoying talking to, I'm going to allow myself to have this connection. If not, then I'm not. Put yourself in spaces to meet people. And then give yourself the opportunity to see whether or not you enjoy that person. Okay? So that's a big one. All right? Being single doesn't mean that you're not dating. It doesn't mean that you're not interacting with people. It doesn't mean that you're alone. That is a practice of self-love. That is giving yourself, right? To love is to nourish, right? Right? Is to cultivate, right? So you have to nourish yourself and your needs. And part of those are your social needs for connection. All right? So the third tip I have when we're talking about how do you practice self-love, okay, is to prioritize your life. What that means is that you are recognizing that because you are single doesn't mean that your life is on hold. And I told y'all this was one of the things that I struggle with, this idea that I can't create, I can't make plans, or I can't go after those plans until I solidify the foundation of my family. No, that's not how it's going to work. You're going to go after those things that you want. You're going to live out your journey, your purpose-driven journey. And as you form relationships, part of what you're evaluating in terms of deciding if that's an adequate partner for you is, do our journeys align? That means you have to already be on a journey. To figure out whether or not there's an alignment means you have to already be on a journey of your own. And what you're seeing is the journey that this person's on in alignment with the journey that I'm on. Right? How do we fit together? So it's not like I have to wait and just stand still and then once I find somebody, create a path to walk down. No, we ain't doing that. You're allowing yourself the freedom to live fully because every moment, like I said, every moment is life. So you're going to capitalize off of every moment of life that you have. Build those things that you want for yourself. Go after those goals that you have. Manifest those dreams of yours. Grow and flourish and be all that you can be. Your full self. Again, this is about being whole. And part of being whole is living fully. And then recognizing that in partnership, you're trying to see how do we coalesce? How do we come together in the things that we both have, in the life that we are both living? How do those align and then, flourish? Right? Okay? So those are my 3 tips. When the question was, how do you practice self-love when you're single? And I just broke it down for you, those things that I'm doing. The first is I center my pleasure. I do those things that feel good to me. I move based on what I like, right? The second thing is that I recognize that being single doesn't mean that I have to be alone. I actively date. I enjoy my time with people. I build connections. I build relationships. And again, like, this is a key point, because oftentimes we think that if I'm not looking for, a committed long-term relationship, that I can't have any type of relationship with somebody. Like, no, it just means I'm not attached to the outcome. I'm not attached to us, committing to one another for the rest of our lives. And I'm absolutely transparent and open about this from jump. So, that part, make sure that you're clear and communicating, because there are people who don't want that, right? There are people who are looking for something different, and they have every right to make that choice that, okay, this is not what I'm looking for. And there are many people who are okay just, enjoying the present with you. And so as long as there's transparency and open communication about, okay, what we're doing right now, then give yourself the opportunity for social connection. And again, like I said, it doesn't have to be romantic. It doesn't have to be sexual. It's just about connection. Because when you deprive yourself of that, when you say, okay, being single means I have to be alone and in isolation, you're starving yourself, and you're setting yourself up to settle for a relationship that you don't want, or that's not actually for you, just so that you can, survive, right? So that you can get that need met. All right? And then we're not trying to settle for something just to get the need met. You're trying to make the intentional choice that, we can rise together. That our bond is something that brings us higher. That the synergy of our connection creates something more powerful than either of us have individually. That's when you make the choice of partnership. Not because I'm so desperate for some type of connection that I'll just take anybody and anything. Okay? And then that third tip is, you are going to continue living. You're going to live. You're not putting your life on hold. You're not waiting. You're not saying, okay, well, life will start when? No. Every moment you have is life. And you are creating your best version of that, with what you have. And if that's not a relationship right now, then that's not part of what you're creating right now. There is more to you. There's more you have to offer. And when you are living divinely in your individual purpose, right, then you recognize that, like, doing that fully is living fully. And then you can make the choice of the appropriate relationship to help that grow, right? Or that aligns with that. If that's something you want. Maybe you don't ever want to be in a relationship, and that's totally fine too. Listen, we all have choices. And this is about you living in your truth. What do you want? What do you enjoy? What do you want your life to be like? So let me know, what questions do you have? Is there anything that you want me to elaborate on or talk more about or figure out, okay, but how do you actually do that? What does that look like in my day-to-day? Because I'm an open book. I'm on this journey now, y'all. Let's see, what month is it? September, July. So I'm 4 months into the commitment, but I've been single since last February. But I'm 4 months into, like, this is a real commitment. Yes, I will post the video. If you didn't catch the whole video, I post them every week on my YouTube channel. So make sure you're following me on Instagram or Facebook, authenticallyme_live free, and I post replays of the videos. So if you didn't catch the whole thing, don't worry, it'll still be there for you. And you can join our listserv too. I always post out reminders of the replay too. liveandlovefree.org. Make sure you get on that newsletter, because I send things just to my community, and I love y'all, and I'm so glad that you are part of this movement with me, right? Because we are. What does this look like? Oh, see, you want me to do a whole nother video. The question was, what does this look like in an open relationship? All right, this gonna have to be next week's video, y'all. About how to practice this level of self-love in an open relationship. I will say that when I opened this up, when I started this, I said, yes, this is what I'm doing single, but this is not just about when you're single, right? These tips are things that you can bring with you in any relationship, okay? But and that you should do even when you are bonded with somebody else, okay? So I'm gonna talk about what that might look like in an open relationship. We're gonna open that discussion later. But yeah, join, follow me, let me know, inbox me if you got questions, if you have topics, if you have things you want me to cover. I love y'all. I'll see y'all next week, 8 o'clock. Get your life. Peace.